Miami University's Middletown Campus was the first regional campus in the state of Ohio when it opened in 1966. The film that you are about to see is a collection of sweet memories of the first 50 years of our Miami University Middletown Campus. We call it MUM for short. It could not have a better nickname. We interviewed more than 100 people whose stories are archived in our Gardner Harvey Library. Out of those stories, it soon became clear that MUM is a product of dreams and aspirations about family and future. Families, individuals, philanthropists, politicians, and industrialists from companies like the Armco Steel Company helped build this campus so that they could better provide for their children, give their children an opportunity to get an education, and create a Middletown community that is better educated, better skilled, and better equipped for a brighter future. Our story begins with one family who called Bunny Hollow in Armco Park their home.
A lot of people call Armco Park Bunny Hollow because of their memories of going to Bunny Hollow's kids and playing there and all. But it was just a small section of the park. But it has that connotation with it of Bunny Hollow, and a lot of people called the park Bunny Hollow, but it was actually Armco Park. And my association with the park started when my mom and dad came up here from one of the Armco farms in 1944. I was born in 1946, so I know quite a bit about the park, having lived here from that time until 1964 when the park was given to Miami.
I remember the groundbreaking ceremony. The Middletown High School marching band played for the groundbreaking ceremony. I was in the marching band, was here and played.
Yes, this is Bob Cordray speaking on behalf of the First National Bank of Middletown, Ohio. We are here for the dedication of the new campus, Miami University in Middletown, Ohio. We are speaking to you at this moment from a platform on the terrace just on the north side of Logan T. Johnston Hall. We are facing north, looking toward the Gardner Harvey Library. A beautiful day in Middletown, Ohio. A crowd of several thousand on hand here for this dedication ceremony. The new Middletown branch campus has been built in a portion of Armco Park on Manchester Road. The initial cost of more than $3 million has been met through a combination of community gifts, a state appropriation of $1 million, and a federal grant of $1,200,000. In addition to the classroom, laboratory building, and the library, initial facilities include a frame building which will be a student activities center. It formerly was the Armco Girls Club Holiday House and has served temporarily as the administrative center for the Middletown campus. Dedication due in just a few moments. We would like to take this opportunity of thanking the First National Bank of Middletown for making this broadcast on WPFB AM and FM possible. The First National Bank of Middletown, Ohio, always interested in the youth of this community, in all youth. They stand behind the youth and wish them well in their endeavors here at the new Miami campus in Middletown, Ohio. One of the featured speakers for today's program will be the Honorable James A. Rhodes, Governor of the state of Ohio. Governor Rhodes due here momentarily. The call to order will be by Dr. C. Eugene Bennett, the director of the Middletown campus of Miami University. The band music in the background, the band from Lemon Monroe High School. There is a massed band of the Middletown High School Marching Band, the Lemon Monroe High School Band, and the Fenwick High School Band. But the band playing at this moment, the Lemon Monroe High School Band. A historical interview or review of Miami University will be presented in just a few moments by Earl V. Feskin, Dean of Educational Services for Miami University. And then another speaker will be Logan T. Johnston, Chairman of the Middletown Campus Committee, Chairman of the Board of the Armco Steel Corporation. Dr. John D. Millett, Chancellor and Director of the Ohio Board of Regents. will be on hand. A presentation will be made by Harry Haight III, the architect for the Middletown campus, and the acceptance by Mr. J. Oliver Amos, Secretary of the Board of Trustees of Miami University. The response by the President of Miami, Dr. Philip R. Schreiber. And then the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the ribbon stretched between two lecterns here on the stand for the distinguished guests here for this dedication program.
In the 1960s, the state of Ohio was in the process of building two-year college campuses. Prior to this, they had what they call extension, where they would teach university classes in the high schools.
I'm a product of the extension program of Miami, which was started by Earl Theskin, who was the director, then dean, of extension services and the continuing education programs. And I attended while working for the Troy Daily News as a very young, fresh out of high school person, the Piqua extension of Miami University. That's where I took my first Miami credits.
My experience with the Middletown campus was actually before there was a campus. The campus didn't open here until 1966, but I took a class in 1965 at Middletown High School as a night school Miami provided.
Well, actually the first time I ever came to the campus was when I was a child, like 12 years old. And the campus here wasn't even built. It was initially over closer to the downtown area, and it was a small building, and they were just holding classes there. And that was part of the extension of the original Miami University campus, and that was where my father came. He wanted to take some classes, and I can't say, he had a whole array of classes.
So it was just really great. So I kept taking my classes, 2 at a time. I started in 1960, and I graduated with a bachelor's degree in 1985. And Dr. Bennett had a special recognition for me, saying I was the longest, continuous kind of student. And I graduated with 144 credits.
The governor wanted regional campuses. Governor Rhodes was a very ambitious governor, and perhaps why he lasted so many terms, but he wanted an airport in every county, which was accomplished, and I think he wanted a regional campus of the state universities within so many miles of every potential student. And luckily for Middletown, we were the first.
Armco had donated the land that was necessary to build the university and the campus here in Middletown. And a number of us were involved and interested not only in Armco's project, but in the project of our own for the city, for Middletown, to have the college here in Middletown. At that time, I believe I was a member of the chamber, maybe even an officer of the chamber.
I came here from Vietnam, 1968. I'm a graduate of Cincinnati and Xavier University, but again, not Miami. But when I came here in '68, I was a PR, public relations staffer with Logan Johnston, the namesake of Johnston Hall. And I used to work with Mr. Johnson. We didn't call him Logan. Mr. Johnson.
Elliot Levy, the senior Mr. Levy, also an attorney in town, was one of the first movers and shakers. Elliot was right there, one of the 2 or 3 people who did it all. And then his son Barry Levy, who had become a state senator and carried, on the behest of Lloyd Goggin, the vice president and treasurer of Miami University, the first state funding bill through the legislature, became really good friends of the campus, as on the heels of his father, and maintained that throughout his life.
Well, my first connection with Miami University was right after I started working with Armco in 1964, and hearing about, you know, the Holiday House being given to the campus, and the Armco girls turning the title over to the campus, because when Armco first donated the campus, they didn't realize that the title was actually in the Armco girls' name. And so anyway, I just heard talk about that, but it was an exciting time, because we were going to have a higher education right here at our back door. And also Armco was going to help us pay for our education, which was wonderful for us.
I knew that it was being built back in the late 60s through Armco. And employees at that time were asked to donate a certain percentage of their income for a certain period of time to help pay for the campus.
It was a community effort. That's one thing about Miami Middletown. It's very community oriented. And I have read articles in the newspaper where children donated, you know, their change, their pennies and things.
Well, when I was going to night school, I said my kids, we had 4 boys, 3 girls. My wife literally raised them. I wasn't there that much. You can imagine going to night school and then and spending that time riding to Dayton. It would have been a lot more convenient to go here in Middletown, and that's why I thought this campus was really going to be a great addition. And then, of course, Armco donated it.
A lot of people in the community, I think, don't realize what a community experiment Miami Middletown was, because this was the first regional campus in the state of Ohio.
The fact that the realization of this dream was made possible by the cooperation, hard work, and financial support of the people of the Middletown, Oxford area, many of whom are present today. I'm very happy to have been a part of this effort and to represent the Middletown Campus Committee at this impressive ceremony. I don't deserve the honor, but I'm not about to give it away. If we were to recognize individually all of those who have had a part in this project, we would be here most of the afternoon. I know we can't do that because Governor Rose has a schedule of at least 6 chicken dinners and 1 ox roast, complete with Ohio tomato juice, before this day is over. I'm even in trouble when I try to recognize the important people. For who is the most important? Is it the governor who allocated to us $2 million from the bond issue, or the widow who pledged $25 to be deducted from her hourly wages earned as a housekeeper? Both are equally important, each in its own way. Nevertheless, I cannot let this occasion go by without acknowledging the support of certain individuals and organizations, even though Dean Theskin has referred to several of them. There was Dr. Millett as president of Miami and as chairman of the Board of Regents. There was the McGraw Construction Company that did the feasibility study, the Barnett's Fund that provided the money for the preliminary drawings, Armco Steel that gave the land on which this university is being built, the JCs that contributed $8,000 for library books before we even knew whether we would have a library, the girls, Armco girls who gave their holiday house, the city of Middletown who came through with facilities needed to enter into a project like this, including Briel Boulevard for the entrance, Governor Rhodes and what he did in putting over state issue number 1, the community support from industries and business, professional people and citizens generally. Gardner Harvey Foundation, which through their very generous gift have created the Gardner Harvey Memorial Library, which we see in front of me, in memory of 2 great citizens, the seniors, Messrs. Gardner and Harvey. We join this morning in publicly acknowledging this wonderful addition to the Middletown campus. There are several members of the Gardner Harvey Foundation present, and I would like each of them to stand and be recognized. Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Harvey, Mr. and Mrs. Colin Gardner, Mr. and Mrs. Robert B. Gardner, Mr. William E. Gardner. I think these members of the Gardner Harvey Foundation deserve a wonderful hand.
From the very first year of the campus, the grand experiment in Bunny Hollow Armco Park took on a family-like atmosphere that makes Mum an appropriate nickname. Some of that family-like atmosphere reflected some of the values of the 1960s.
It was in 1965, about a year before the campus opened, that my father and I attended a men's fellowship meeting at our local church, First United Methodist Church, and Dean Deskin was the speaker. And he talked about the beginning of the Middletown campus. Of course, like I say, this was in July of '65. And I, of course, had heard about the campus, but didn't know much about what would be offered. And I had taught a little bit of industrial teaching at Armco, enough to be interested in it. And I knew I wanted to do something other than being a research engineer.
And I found out about it and I applied, and it took a while because, again, there were a lot of kinks. And it was very close to the time that the campus was opening that I found out that I even had the job. I was here 3 semesters. And I tell the girls and the middle-aged women that I lost my job when I delivered my first child, which was in January of '68.
I taught math here for 31 years. The faculty in the beginning were all housed in Johnson Hall. Our offices were all in 2 hallways. Pretty close-knit community there, as Ryan alluded to, among the various aspects of the campus. We partied a lot, we had fun together, we laughed a lot. As a matter of fact, the night that Larry and I got engaged, we attended a faculty party after he gave me my ring. And it was an impromptu announcement that we were engaged, but by golly, the host of the party, Dr. Serge Gonzalez, brought out the champagne, and we all had at least a little sip of champagne in honor of our engagement.
Very, 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 very close. Very, very, very close. We cried for others. We laughed for others.
One of the interesting things is 6 of the original faculty members were World War II veterans. So I thought it was quite unusual that we'd have that many at the time. We had Joe Eyre, we had Gene Bennett, who was director, we had Joe Baxter, who taught history, Bob Kelwick, who was an expert on the German and the Nazis, and he's written several books about them. Malcolm Sabdan was a World War II pilot, taught poetry and creative writing, and Ray Fenning was a Marine Corps colonel who taught political science.
My relationship with Miami really began probably when I met my husband-to-be, and that would have been in 1970. And when I was at his parents' home, one of the first things that I noticed was that my father-in-law, who was a professor at Miami Middletown, Colonel Ray Fenning, had students in his den, and I thought, wow. But Tom said, that's my husband, he said, oh, he always has somebody. And my father-in-law taught political science. He was involved in the community as a city commissioner. He had been a retired military in the Marines, and he really believed in his students.
The faculty and the staff seemed to form as sort of a family unit, but it seemed almost automatic. This was all a new adventure for us, so we were all eager to get on with the project.
When I graduated from high school, well, actually it was during my senior year, this campus was in the construction phase. And I had the opportunity to be student with the #1 designation. I had enrollment application 0001, so I was the first student here. I'm the oldest guy around then.
I had a lot of kids that I graduated high school with, and the campus was just opening at that time because I graduated in '66, and a lot of them went to MUM.
One of the gentlemen that I worked with at Ou Research Lab, his daughter Judy was one of the first to enroll. And Jack was telling us about the campus.
Oh, I was overjoyed because I didn't get to go to college, and I thought how wonderful my children would get to go.
I found out as Rod Nims was going back through data that my dad had served on a committee that was looking for, working to find a site for the campus. When I asked my mom about it, she said, your dad was really excited that there was going to be an opportunity for you boys to, my brother and I, for you boys to go to school in Middletown.
I went to high school, 3 different high schools my senior year because my parents were divorced. So I ended up at Middletown High School with, I thought, no chance of college. And MUM opened in 1966, which is the year I graduated. So that's how I got to MUM. I got a National Defense student loan, and I wouldn't be a teacher if it wasn't for MUM.
When I was in high school, money was tight in our family, and I had won a scholarship at school, and my scholarship was only $200, but that $200 actually paid for, I think, the first semester here at MUM, my books and the college education and everything, so that helped. And that was the main reason that I came here, and I know some of my classmates, that was the reason for them coming too, because it was so convenient that it was so close to the town we lived in, and just coming here and the cost. I mean, it was very beneficial to have it and to start up. We were very lucky.
I entered the fall of 1967 as an education major, and then I switched to English and speech shortly thereafter. And I ultimately graduated from Miami Middletown because I was able to get all of my classes here. St. Patrick's Day, 1972.
I graduated from Middletown High School in 1968, and I wanted to pursue an educational career, but the money wasn't there, not at all. But a few years, like 2 or 3 years prior to my graduating from high school, they built this thing called Miami University Middletown.
I started at Miami over at Oxford in 1963. Then later on, I only went that one summer, 2 classes, and something happened in my life that I could not go back. And it was disastrous that first year. So when I was volunteering down at Mayfield School, Mr. Kraut called me and he said, Lois, he said, when you finish here in the cafeteria today, he said, would you stop by my office? I'd like to talk with you. And he said, you know, Miami University opened up this fall, and past fall, and he said, you work so well with the kids, and it seemed like you enjoy it, and they enjoy being around you. You're making them feel special. And he asked me if I would consider going to college here. I said, oh, there's no way I can afford to go to college with our income. I was working part-time, you know, and I was always home when the kids went to school and home when the kids got back home from school. He said, but you could teach and be teaching during the school day. And he said, why don't you just go over and get matriculated? Well, I had to go home and look up in the dictionary what matriculated meant. And so I went through and I thought, okay, and I prayed about it. I thought, how am I going to do it? I signed up, and I took 2 classes, I think the first term of January 1968.
My story began at Oxford, and because of financial circumstances, I ended up finishing my college career here at Middletown. And I think what I found very interesting is the flexibility that the campus offered me. First of all, there were 2 other girls who had gone to high school with me, and we had had Spanish from the 5th grade on. And in those days, you did not test for placement. They automatically assumed we knew a great deal. So we were thrown into a 300 level class with Dr. Schuler. We met in his office, the 3 of us. If someone was absent, there was a phone call. It's like, you need to get here because I'm not translating your pages today.
And looked around and decided maybe I'll go to Miami. When the time came in '69 to enroll, I had the choice of buying another sports car or living on campus in Oxford, and I opted for sports car here. Became a disciple of Malcolm Sadam, who mentored me and shaped my career. At one point I thought I'd make my living doing creative writing. I'm a school psychologist. I've written boring psychological reports for about 39 years now.
When I told my parents I was going to start taking classes here, and at first my parents thought that was crazy. Get a job at Armco so you can buy a car. That's what my dad told me. And then I overheard him a couple years later talking to some people, some friends of his, and he said, yeah, my daughter's in college. She's in college. She's going to be a teacher. So at first I think they thought it was kind of silly, but then I know that they were very proud.
And you were probably the first college graduate in your family.
I met my dear wife here over a game of foosball.
Right there.
Right there. And that evolved into what became a Miami merchant. We've been married for 44 years.
Miami University is like a family to me, and I was very pleased to be able to come to the campus versus go to a vocational training type school, because I felt like I would do better in this academic atmosphere. And I did receive my degree here, and a cum laude degree, and it was very special to my family and me because I had survived a very serious motor vehicle accident and at the time I had sufficient memory loss, and I wasn't really sure if I still had the capability to learn in an academic setting. So my family was very encouraged, but not really sure exactly how it would work out since I'd been out of school for several years. So anyway, I was able to continue my education and graduate cum laude. So we were all very excited about that. And then 2 of my grandchildren have also attended classes here. My oldest grandson, he and I took one of the same classes, which was a history of jazz. So that gave us like a little intergenerational connection to discuss how much we both enjoyed that class. And also he's very into computers, and I was able to share with him my textbook on the introduction to the computers and how big they used to be, and he was pretty interested in seeing that information. He had no idea what, the initial computers were like and how big they were.
I decided to come to Miami Regionals, Miami Middletown in particular, because my mom was a graduate of the regional campuses. She graduated from the nursing program and has her RN from Middletown. And when my sister and I were looking into colleges, my mom said, well, let's check out Miami Middletown. You're going to get a Miami degree. It's a good option for you. And so my sister came here, and she relocated to Oxford. She's now a teacher. So then when I was looking for an education, looking to where to go, Middletown seemed to pop out, and it was kind of in my blood to go. I was raised in a family that everything is Miami. Everything in our garage is red, everything in our basement's red, everything is Miami.
I have a family connection, I hope, coming up this year. And I started here the first year that it was opened in 1966.
Yeah.
Seems like forever. But my granddaughter, who is 16, is planning to come and do what they used to call a post-secondary option. I believe it's called something else now. This coming fall. So 50 years later, my granddaughter's going to be coming.
Yeah.
Miami University Middletown was not only a grand experiment in education, it was also a crucible of social change. Our campus opened in the 1960s when many in the United States struggled to make a more perfect union. The following are just a few examples of the challenges some of our students faced. These stories and those in the Sweet MUMories archive show that Miami University Middletown became a community that changes the world one person and one situation at a time. It is a campus culture that many of our students carried into their careers.
Well, majorly the theme is it economical? Can I afford to come to a university with the reputation of Miami University? The fact that it's open admission gave a lot of folks an opportunity to really get their education because it was going to be reasonable in cost. Number two, the location on the bus line, easy to drive to. Parking was available. It was right in the middle, so to speak, of the community, and you couldn't miss it, passing it on either University or Brill Boulevard. And so it's the access, I think access, the fact that it was affordable, open admission. It was giving opportunities to a lot of community members who probably couldn't have continued on in higher education.
My general impression of Miami University as a whole is that it's a first-rate school, and the regional campuses give us a chance to take advantage of that at more affordable rates, shall we say, because we don't have to pay for the expenses of the main campus.
I think if Miami Middletown would have been here, I don't even know if I'd have been able to attend college because I didn't have more money. And I worked while I was here. I worked at McGowan's, if you guys remember the store McGowan's.
Oh, yes.
And so once I got about a year and a half here, then I worked in a factory, and I knew that I wanted to get back into college. But I saved enough money and eventually went to Oxford and got my degree again.
I would bring speakers to class. One was a libertarian speaker who was talking about, freedom to drink, have alcohol and whatever, and then you pay the consequences or something doesn't work. And after the class, I remember this, one of the students came up and she said, so-and-so in this class? And I said, yes. She just got out of prison for motor vehicle homicide. And so what that taught me is that you don't know who's in the room. You have to really be conscious of what's being said and reflect.
When I first came here, there have a lot of people that came up from Kentucky, and they found jobs at General Motors, Armco, and they did very well. They also went back on the weekends, if you don't know that. They would talk about how tight the bridge was and how much traffic there was at the bridge. So you have a population that migrated up here for jobs. They're passing on that value to their children about, go get a college education. And, here's Middletown Campus sitting right in the middle of it all, an opportunity.
But I won't forget a student who came to me and said, and it was a composition class, beginning composition class, and I remember her saying, this was just the hardest class I've ever had. And she said, but I feel like I've pushed myself, I've challenged myself, I feel like I can do this. She had a lot of discrimination against her, and she carried that baggage into the classroom. And I say that because she was from, deep Appalachia. She had a strong Kentucky accent, and it was used against her regularly in terms of how people perceived her intellectual capacity.
The two ladies on campus who were of great renown, Clair Easton and Cynthia Yang, between them, they started a group for the returning students, the women, I guess, and they call it the Rusty Nails.
Early summer of 1947, when I was graduated from Franklin High School. And I didn't have any aspirations for college, but my friends decided I needed to go. And so we went to Miami to sign me up for the fall term. And I remember standing in the registrar's office an extremely long time. And that's because my friend was trying to convince them that I should stay in the dorm, but at that time we weren't allowed to stay in the dorms. We weren't welcome to stay in the dorms.
Since we're not on tape, who is we? We're not
Colored,
on video.
All minority girls,
Okay.
African Americans.
African Americans.
Mm-hmm. So after a while of discussion, the registrar finally said, well, we do have a room near the furnace room. We could fix that up nice for her. And so then we decided that wasn't for me, so I didn't go. So I call that my little, a lesson that I would keep in my mind without holding a grudge. We were not supposed to hold grudges. So then in the early 60s, before the campus was built, Miami held classes at Middletown High School, and that's when I came back. And I stayed at MUM, then MUM was developed. And I just call that my big lesson in forgiveness, because if I'd held a grudge against Miami, I may never finish my education, because coming to MUM allowed me to keep my day job and pursue my degree. I spent my summers hop, skipping, and jumping from campus to campus wherever a class was offered. So besides going to Boston University, I went to, was that Salem State? Salem State, I took reading there. And I was rather brave in those days, because that reading course was only for graduate students, and I certainly was far from that because I hadn't received my degree yet, but I petitioned and got in. So I went there, and I've been to Mount St. Joe and UC and University of Toledo, Akron U, Ohio U.
Would you say that attending the Middletown campus was a gateway to a career for you?
Oh, indeed. Indeed, yes.
I matriculated to the Miami University Middletown campus as a what was called non-traditional student. When I graduated from high school, I had attended another university unsuccessfully, and I ended up being drafted into the Marine Corps, and I probably would not have continued my education had it not been for the availability to attend this campus, because economics was a main consideration. So I started here in 1970. I spent a year in Vietnam and 4 years in the Marine Corps, and
graduated in 1974. I'm still leverage that degree today. I was in public accounting for about half of my career, and I had a firm that I started of my own that I had for 10 years with a partner. I, from there, went to a public company into a CFO position in Cincinnati. And from there, I went to a CEO position for a regional restaurant chain, Gold Star Chili. And I am officially retired today, but I'm probably as busy as I have ever been today, with a lot of different board involvements and involvements with nonprofit organizations.
I was in my early 20s, and the campus was kind of new, but it was in my hometown. And so I had a toddler at home, and we were, had our own business. And so I began at Miami as a non-traditional student. I was really nervous and very afraid that I wouldn't be able to do it. So, when I came here in the 1980s as a young mom with a toddler, I never dreamed I would be sworn in as a state representative.
The faculty and staff were so good to me, but it was kind of different because, remember, I was a male. And back then, you didn't have many males that wanted to be an elementary teacher. In fact, I only know about 2 or 3 of us that ended up actually graduating with the degree of an elementary education, in elementary education. But they supported you. They made sure that you were ready. The methods courses that were given here were very, very good, and they helped me when I did my student teaching. The pressures were that men were supposed to be more of the upper elementary, like maybe the 4th or the 5th or 6th grades. And we that chose to do the lower grades sometimes were looked on as maybe not as masculine, maybe.
In nursing, nationwide, has basically been a female occupation. However, from the beginning of nursing at Miami, we have always had some male students. In the early years, a very small number. I found out this week that the current class is about 13% male, which is a little higher than in the general population, which is probably nearer 10 to 11%. So the number of men in nursing has greatly increased. We have had African American students. We've had students from other countries, usually 1 or 2 at a time. And of course, men in nursing is a minority. We also had a student who was a member of the Miami Indian tribe from Oklahoma. I forgot to say we've also had Hispanic or Spanish students. At one point, we called together a group of graduates who were minority students and asked them, were there things that we could do that would actually make our program attractive to minority students? And they made a number of suggestions that we tried to follow up on.
I really, in many ways, was fortunate. I think I looked at the number of committees that I served that were university committees, and I really hit a lot of them at the time. I chaired 2 of the overall university committees during my time there, and I was on, 4 or 5 of the university committees. Now, part of this, I think, was the result of Miami had very few black faculty. When I started at Miami, the year I was hired, they had a total of 16 faculty and staff who were black. Now, by staff, I mean, people who were, staff, and those were on campus. And when I started on the Middletown campus, there were 2 of us. Oldamy was here, and me. And that was it.
Dr. Ewers was the Vice President of Student Affairs at Middletown, and he also was an author. He also was a huge supporter of the African American students and diversity on this campus. He was a very powerful orator. Darius Pryor was the assistant director for admissions, but also for multicultural affairs. So he had a dual role. He was supposed to work with recruiting students of color and also responsible for multicultural programming, both of which he was fantastic at. During the time that he was here, he was able to increase the enrollment of African American students on this campus. Because he is from the Middletown community.
We had friendships.
We made lifelong friends.
Yeah, lifelong friends, almost like a surrogate family, I think. When Diane started, Diane is from Youngstown, Ohio. I'm from Cleveland. And we both have an Italian heritage. She a little bit more than me, but not much. And
twice?
And, no, I had my ancestry.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
I'm 65%.
Okay, sorry.
Anyway, so, and we just immediately hit it off and became friends. We had a lot in common. We knew that part of the country. There were a lot of things that we didn't have to explain to each other. And I think the other thing, at least I was thinking about this, one of the things, I came from a working class background, from a very diverse part of Cleveland. So when I first was a student on the Oxford campus as an undergraduate, I thought I had no idea where I was and I couldn't stand it. It was so different from anything I'd experienced before. I mean, I think it was a form of culture shock. When I came here, it felt comfortable because it was what I understood. It reminded me, I mean, there was ethnicity, there was diversity, there were people who, you know, maybe they weren't all the best students in the world, but
they worked hard.
They worked hard. For the most part, they worked hard. They were trying. You know, they didn't have everything kind of handed to them. And I just like the atmosphere a lot.
Parents have worked in steel industries and difficult jobs in factories, and they want more for their children than that. And that's why this campus is here in the first place. And so many people sent their children here so they can get an education, get a better job, make a better salary than they did. And I mean, that was right, you know, where we came from.
The thing that I discovered about this campus very early on, and I relish it to this day because it was such a wonderful thing, was that there was an intense intellectual curiosity. People were receptive to ideas. They were aggressive about it. They were less concerned about promotion and tenure, and they were more concerned about the kind of intellectual platform that they were going to provide for their students and for their own growth.
How do I communicate just the overall messages about microbiology that this audience needs to know? And that became it was really difficult. And I wasn't very good at it. And when I'm not very good at something, it really makes me mad. And so I would go back to the drawing board. I'm going to change the course this way. I'm going to change the course this way. I'm going to change the course this way, which eventually led me to, with just a little too much hubris on my side, it led me to think that I could write a better textbook than any of the textbooks out there for this audience. And now I have two textbooks. One is in its 5th edition and another's in its 3rd edition.
Well, the one thing that I found especially important, I think, is that in teaching courses about American Indian nations, which both Dolph and I were doing, we were teaching a lot of students who were in education. And they were going to be going into the classroom and either perpetuating the stereotypes and the myths that are so prevalent in our own society, or getting a more realistic perspective that they could pass on to their students.
I was supposed to meet Gene Bennett, who was the executive director at the time, and Mark Plageman walked me down there. And so I said to him casually, so how much input do you folks have in this hiring decision? He says, oh, we pretty much tell them who we want, that's who we get. And I thought, well, it's a good thing this went well, because nobody ever told me that. And so then I met with Gene Bennett, who spent most of his time interviewing me, emphasizing that if you get a job here, it is not the way to get to Oxford. It is not the road to Oxford. You can't expect to transfer to Oxford. And I kept assuring him, I've been at a four-year college. I want to be here.
I became a student in 1980. I finally decided I wanted to try. You know, I was 60 years old, so I'm not a normal person taking classes. But I was treated fairly, and I enjoyed all my instructors. So I got an associate degree in arts with a concentration in history in 1988.
My kids were getting older, and they were going to need to go to college. And my husband was making good money, but something could happen. He's in construction, you know. And how would I put them through school? How would I take care of myself? And then there was this unfinished business. And I thought, I know I've got credit hours. I'd gone to school 2 years. So almost 2 years. I think I had about 40 credit hours. And I thought, I could do this. And so I went to Mum, and I was scared to death when I went, but everybody was just, you can do this.
I had one desk. One desk and multi-hats. But it was at a point when universities were recognizing that they had students with disabilities or students with limitations they could do so much better. For example, if they had a Kurzweil reader, or they had something that would enlarge print. Now we don't think anything of it because we have the computer that takes care of some of that. For students that maybe have ADHD or they need more time on a test because they have MS or something on that order, my office was a space where they could take a test.
The African American community and the white communities were very separate when I was growing up, with the exception, if we lived in that particular school district, we attended that same school. But as far as the interaction of us, like, say for instance, the children that we went to in our class, they were not going to be coming to our houses for our birthday parties or things of that nature. I think the diversity at the campus and making everybody feel equal and accepted, I think that is one of the attractions to the campus, where everybody is important, everybody is equal.
I like the part of our population that handles our international students, the ELC, the English Language Center. I think 2-3 years ago, I don't remember how long ago it was, but I was an orientation leader for the ELC, so when we had, I think they were our first or second group of international students come over here, me along with 2 other students, we were their domestic orientation leaders along with international orientation leaders as well. But so we got to lead, I think, about 150 to 200 international students that summer to bring them into the school, to help them learn English just a little bit, play games with them, basically what we do around with our domestic students, but it was a little bit different with them. But I think we spent like 8 to 5 with them Monday through Friday for a whole week. So getting to be around them and talk to them for a whole entire week. And now some of them play sports now, or at least they used to before they transferred to Oxford. And so still like remaining friends with them now and seeing them around campus, I think is really like a cool part of our student population as well.
If you were to sit in a regular classroom, specifically for one of my classes, I know there's a few international students in there. There's a mother with 4 children. There is a guy who didn't go to college for 20 years and is now deciding to come back. And there's just like regular typical students that come straight from high school, or there's some CCP students who are still in high school taking college classes. And as a CCP student, you can take college courses even in middle school. So you could have a middle schooler in your class, and you could have a 70-year-old in your class too. So it's just super diverse, and I think it really represents the surrounding community so well, because Middletown is a very diverse place, and I think we reflect awesomely at that.
The beginning of the athletic program here was just a basketball program. 1967, I was approached by a faculty member here, and I was at that time working in Oxford, teaching in the School of Education, mathematics, and was asked to start a basketball program over here. So, and that's what we did. We had no real facility. All we had was Johnson Hall and the library, I think, and maybe Theskin. But the basketball started really across the street in Manchester Junior High. And we had probably 45, 50 young men try out for the basketball team. We really had no schedule, no place to play, and no players at the time. No uniforms, no budget, et cetera, et cetera. But with the support of Dr. Eugene Bennett, our executive director, and some faculty support, we got it rolling.
We moved into in here in the fall of 1972, and we had just won the state championship in basketball, first time ever, the previous winter, and we were expecting a lot of turnout for kids to play basketball. I think we had 11 kids come out. 2 of the kids had never played high school basketball that year, and so it was more of a struggle there than we thought it was going to be after coming off winning the state tournament. But we always had good kids, kids that would play for the heart and soul of the program, and it was the first year playing in here was just was kind of a dream that we just didn't have to go anywhere to travel to take our equipment or anything like that, and had the ability to have our own gymnasium.
Yeah, it was 1977. Okay.
And you were a student here, right?
I had played basketball for 3 years, and I was completing my degree really in Oxford, maybe taking one class here, but completing my degree in Oxford at that time. And Lynn asked me if I wanted to coach the women's team, because they were looking at starting a women's team, and sure. So that's how it started, and we had a list of athletes that were on campus. It was December already, and we got them out to play. We formed a team, and it was fun. I mean, they had a great time. We had some really good athletes. I think we only played like 7 games that first year, but won a game in the state tournament, got to the semifinals, and so had some success, and that started the team.
And at that time, in the early or late 70s, early 80s, women's programs were not respected. I mean, we were always second in line to the boys for whatever they had at my high school. And so when it was offered that a women's basketball camp or a girls' basketball camp was being offered here in Middletown, it was a great opportunity for high school girls athletes at that time to come and experience what would be expected of them at the next level, or even to get more experience in the basic skills of basketball. And so being part of that first camp and learning those skills, Coach Slager met me and then recruited me later on to come and play here. And I felt very honored at the time because of just the respect that the athletes that worked here had and the coaches that he brought in had for us as athletes, just made you want to be a part of that.
Well, I am the commissioner of the Ou Rcc, and I think this might be my 4th year, maybe. But we've had teams come and go, but the basic teams that originally started when Lynn started that are still there. And we try to govern the academic progress of students and make sure that everybody who's playing a sport is eligible according to our guidelines. So that's one of the big jobs that I have, checking everybody's eligibility. The other thing is, we provide a conference schedule for all of the teams that we support.
And some of the things that I found from my coaches as examples, and the ladies that I played with as well, lifelong friends that I still, work with in the community, and are great friends that I'll see this weekend. But I think mostly it was that feeling of not knowing what I was going to do with myself, and bringing me into something so special, and allowing me to work toward a common success with people who were driven, and the support. Just you feel like whatever you need, whether it's the professors that kind of helped you work through what major am I going to take on. It was life altering for me, honestly.
Well, I really liked the library. We could come and we had to be quiet, of course, in here, but we could sit at a table in a group if we wanted to and study together and ask each other questions, or we had little cubicles that we could go sit by ourselves.
Instructional Materials Center, at least that was one of the reasons I came here. The second reason was there was this cute little librarian that I met at the front desk. And, we get together occasionally, and we've now been married 35 years.
And she's sitting in the front row.
Like Tim said, it was a good place to meet people.
We didn't have a television in this building, and I remember one afternoon, all of our student assistants couldn't be found. Well, there was a television over in Johnston Hall in the student something or other. And it was the day of Luke and Laura's wedding on whatever soap they were on. And so all the students were watching Luke and Laura's wedding.
In December of 1969, they decided to replace the draft with a lottery system. The story is when they were starting to draw the balls from the tumbler, there were about 25 of us gathered in the Verdi Lodge right in around in here. Because at the time, they had a television right there in the corner. Relatively large screen for the time.
We also did the radio station. I also did Rusty
And
Nails.
the radio station was WMUM?
Yes, that's what it was. That's what it was. I worked for the student newspaper, which was known as Chaos at the time. I was assistant editor for 2 years. And we covered everything from everything. We did entertainment news, that was my forte. And we did news, things that were important, anything that, we could possibly find a story, we did it there.
I graduated from Edgewood High School in the summer of 1978, and I had already made plans to come to Miami and Middletown. I got involved in my first semester in the MUM campus chorale with Warren Parker, loved that. We sang the Messiah around Christmas time, and it was just a beautiful experience. I was always involved in Chaos, the student newspaper. Don't know if the name's been changed since then.
Were you here when there was a student activity where they kidnapped professors to raise money, had made a corral out in Johnson Hall, put them in jail, and I was sitting on the balcony with, since I can't pay students, who was the photographer for Chaos, when we saw the National Guard truck come down the hill and the troops start pouring out because someone called them and said the students were rioting and kidnapping professors.
There was a lot of windows down there.
In the periodicals room.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You were exposed to a lot of things down there because you could see everything. You could see nature. We had
the squirrels,
the rabbits. Then we had an Easter bunny. That was our streaker. I had a streaker come by. Yes, you want me to elaborate? Yeah, it was my night to work downstairs in Periodic, and it was a Thursday evening right before Good Friday. I was just sitting because it was quiet. I'd already filed everything. It's like, okay, what am I gonna do? We just sort of sit down and you read a magazine, And so they run by. They knocked on the window, and he hopped away with his little cottontail, and I was like, what? And so I saw it, and they said, oh, so here's the Easter Bunny. I wonder if he left you any eggs. But no, he didn't leave any eggs, but we just let him go. We didn't need to tell security. We just let that happen. It was just fun. A lot of people saw it, not a lot, but some saw it.
There was also a portion of time where inmates from Lebanon Correctional Institute came.
Oh, yes.
And I think they liked playing pool better than being in class. I don't know if that experiment lasted a long time, but that was also quite the experience.
And a lot of them like to come here to the library between their classes. And this evening in 1974, our security guard, it was either Joe or John Carmody, came through looking for any of the LCI guys who were in the building because there had been a bad tornado in Xenia, Ohio, and they needed these guys from Lebanon Correctional Institution to go out to Xenia, as the security guard put it, to look for bodies.
I remember one of the first days of class, there was a bomb scare. And word was, I don't think we had, I know we didn't have any intercom system, and I'm pretty sure the word was spread by people coming to your classroom door and saying, we have to evacuate the building, very, very discreetly, telling the instructor that had to happen, and we did. I mean, it was just somebody's idea of fun. There was nothing to it, but we did have a bomb scare back in 1966, first semester of classes.
We had something similar to that in the middle of an exam. Somebody came to the door and said, we all have to leave. And these are my nursing students. And so I said, okay, just leave your papers. And then went outside, and I was thinking, okay, we have a little security breach here, probably. Because they were all standing outside, and I said, all right, everybody, I want arm's length between everyone standing out here. And they thought that was funny. I said, I am serious. But no, trusting students, I think, is an important thing.
Sure.
I tell students now, they come in and take a makeup exam or something, and they say, do you want to take my, my bag or something like that, or doesn't somebody need to watch me? I go, when I stop trusting my students, I'm going to quit this job. It's not worth it. And that really is a way to, I think, engender trust in them too. And I think that's one of the nice things about being here on this campus is the students are more, I think, in tune with the real world and trust amongst people, whether they're teachers or anything. You go to four-year schools and other campuses like that, and sometimes it's an us against them mentality. But I never got that. I never get that here at MUM. Never have.
I remember the veterans in particular coming in. One particular student stays in my mind, a woman, and she came in and she didn't really expect to serve. She didn't think she would be sent overseas, but she was going to go. She just didn't have a deployment date. And we were talking back and forth and coming up with a schedule for her, and I remember she said, I want to go. I want to go. It made such an impression on me.
I was also part of the Model UN program, which we got to go to New York. I did that for 4 years. And we went there September 11th, the April after September 11th was there, we were there. So it was a big wake-up call for all of us, and we got to see what New York was really like back then and stuff, and it was pretty interesting.
You know, we'd all come into this campus, which is down in this Bunny Hollow, and we have this big snowstorm, and they cancel classes, but nobody comes to clear the snow. So everyone, all the guys had to push everybody up the hill to get back home. And I still think about, what about those last two guys? Yeah.
Well, this community has been blessed for many, many years. When I came to this community in the late 50s, early 60s, everybody was involved. You know, when I say everybody, I mean, as we discussed, John talked about Armco being involved in all the paper companies, but they expected their people to be involved too. And it was just, we were just blessed with people that, and not big companies, you know, just individual people that stepped up to the plate. I'm just thinking of the Dave Finkelman Auditorium. I mean, he was just a realtor here in town. But everybody kind of stepped up to the plate and made this campus what it is today.
All due credit needs to be given specifically to Clair Easton, who was the first director of continuing education and was the head of the Artist and Lecture Series. And Claire was a dynamo. I mean, she really was well educated. She took her degree at the University of Chicago, I believe, which has what in those days was a major continuing education training facility program. And she knew what she was doing. And she created a host of programs designed on the continuing education side, specifically for area business and industry, for individuals with leisure activity kinds of programming. But her real baby, and she loved it the most, was the Artist and Lecture Series. And she managed also to bring in talent that people in Middletown otherwise would not be able to experience. I mean, from major internationally known opera stars, orchestras, everything you can imagine. In that regard as well, and from a community development concept, she worked with the Casper family. Isidore Casper, a family of attorneys here, Isidore and his sons, were very generous and very fond of Claire and of the program and things that were going on here.
Claire had this way of identifying artists, performers, and groups that were just about to make it big. They were just on the cusp, and she would get them here for a pittance.
Back in the 70s when I was on campus, it was Campus Community Players, and it was both students on campus performing as well as community members not involved with the campus having opportunity to perform. We did all kinds of major productions. The one I remember was the Glass Menagerie that we had Mercedes McCambridge as a guest artist on campus playing the role of the mother.
They used one of the larger classrooms. It was then room 113 in Johnston Hall. It is now a part of the campus community center, that same bit of geography there in the main hallway of Johnston. And of course, once Finkelman opened in September of '69, it made a lot more things possible. It brought in, for example, Vincent Price, Leonard Nimoy, Dizzy Gillespie, Woody Herman and the Thundering Herd, Mercedes McCambridge, and some very major performers, William Wyndham as James Thurber.
The theater opened in 1969. If I remember, the first show ever performed was in September of '69. When I first started working here, I literally could have worked here every night of my life the first 3 years I was in college. We had that much stuff going on. We had campus community was doing 4 shows a year. They were doing them all here. They were rehearsing here. Yeah. We had the Artist and Lecture Series was always here. The film series, the travelogues were always here. And of course, we had groups come in. Regularly, we had the Shakespeare Company come in from Washington, D.C., the National Shakespeare Repertory Company.
I was summoned to the campus because I was the high school speech theater teacher across the street at Middletown High School. And I was told that I was to be the technical director. It was not a job interview. And I found out that Gladys Finkelman said to bring me over here because she was watching the productions at Middletown High School, even though they had no children at the school. She came to all of these, which I didn't know. So that's kind of how I got the job, I guess. You know, in the lecture artist series, we had several opera singers, and I can't remember their names, but I was amazed because after one of them had performed here, she was backstage and she said, you know, your acoustics match Lincoln Center. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, she'd performed at Lincoln Center and she said that. And when she sang that night, she used no mic.
Roscoe Lee Brown was here doing a poetry reading. There were speakers all over the stage and microphones and cables, and Roscoe Lee Brown walked in and he said, "What is all of this?" And I said, "Well, it's the sound system that you insisted on us having." And he walked to the center of the apron that I'd built and he went, "Take all of that away, we don't need it."
We had some Broadway musicals, what they call bus and truck shows. They were the one-night stand types of things, so they were a little bit scaled back. Ain't Misbehavin' was one of the favorites that always packed the house.
My time here has been shorter than the others. I was at Middletown Campus from 2006 to 2008 before I moved to Oxford. I guess when I got here, I was really interested in whether or not there was theater going on here, because I'd done theater in high school, I'd started doing theater in the community, and I wanted to perform here. I went to Dave Ballard one time and I said, "Hey, Mike says that I need to come and talk to you about doing theater here, and has something been done in the past?" And he kind of gave me this wizened old looked down his glasses at me, and he says, "Well, have a seat." and he started to go through the history of Bunny Hollow Players and how that had been formed, and he was the advisor for Bunny Hollow Players, and how they used to organize dinner theaters at Verity Lodge, and once in a while they would have them here.
I was a student worker at Dave Finkelman Auditorium it was at the end of my freshman year. I'd been in Mike McVeigh's theater class, and he was looking to recruit some more students for his crew because it had undergone 9 months of renovations. Working there sort of led me to restart the Bunny Hollow Players. I know we were talking about organizations. Anybody familiar with Bunny Hollow Players? Bunny Hollow Players. When I wanted to help restart it, it had been, I think, the third reactivation.
There was a group in town called Artist in Residence. And what they would do is to bring in a single artist for a 2 to 3 week residency and try to take them from school to school to school. Very complex scheduling, very complex if you have to move a lot of equipment. And we're talking, major pianists or cellists like Lauren Hollander, some people of this caliber. What we decided was it might be easier, because that group for a couple of years hadn't brought somebody in. We thought, we've got a theater. We had just got done replacing the lighting system. We just got done replacing the sound system. So we had the stage. We had the equipment. We had, at that point, a 749-seat house. What if the schools brought the students to the theater and we provided the artist? It would be essentially the same kind of relationship, the opportunity for school children who might not have the opportunity to experience a live arts performance, to give them that opportunity. And so we began it in 2000. And it is still continuing. I did it until I stopped handling the artist series, and then Susan Joyce, now retired from our music faculty, shepherded for many years, and now music faculty member at Middletown, Sean Fenton, has just completed his first season.
Walking out here after a show and people walking up to you and you have truly done something special for them. They are truly feeling something special. Whether you were in the show, whether you were backstage, it's making a difference. It's a sense of wow, I had this impact, and these people are happier and more fulfilled than they were as a result of what we did. That is so cool. That is so cool.
According to the 1907 catalog of Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, one of the tasks of the College of Liberal Arts from the year 1809 was to prepare its students for life. The faculty and staff of the Miami University Middletown Campus continue to make this task one of their top priorities. For many of our students, this means introducing them to the diverse world beyond their town, their county, their state, and their country. The world is now their neighborhood.
I'm from a small town, and I went to the Model United Nations with Mel, and we studied up everything on Greece. And when he took us to New York City, he said, "You've never been on a bus before?" No. "You've never been in a taxi before?" No. So he taught us a lot about different cultures, because there was a lot of us at this campus that really had not had those experiences. He got tickets for all of us to go to a jazz musical thing at the Apollo Theater, which was not something that we had mostly had exposure to.
The Model UN was fun. We learned about different countries because we were assigned a country, and then we had to learn about some aspect of it. We had to write a proposition, and then when we went to New York for the Model UN, it was just, I guess, like a regular UN where people would make resolutions and you would vote on them, and you would meet other people and try to get them to vote your view, or vice versa. So that was a good experience also. It was very important because you got to see the world a little more, and outside our little box of Middletown.
If you're just a student and you're just coming to class and going home, you don't get that experience. And so I would say get involved.
We had a French club. I was president of the French club, and we sold some, I forget what we sold, to get money to go to Quebec. And we went. Mark Plageman was our teacher and our mentor in our club, and we went in the wintertime. And first we went to Toronto, which was a first. All these are firsts for me. Going to Toronto, I stayed overnight there, and one of the students wouldn't come. After we went out to eat and walked around downtown, one of the students wouldn't come out with us. And I said, "Why didn't you come out?" She did. When we got to Montreal, she did come out with us. But I said, "Why didn't you come out in Toronto?" She said, "All those people." I said, "They're not all outside at one time." So she blossomed, I'd say, on that trip.
I actually went to Miami University. Before I started going here, my mom went here. So I was a freshman when my mom was a junior, senior, and she worked for student activities. So even when I was a high school student, I went along on all the student activities trips. When we had our fall break, which was like a 3 or 4 day weekend, we went to Nashville one year, and there were activities planned the whole time you were there, going to different museums and things like that. They went to Michigan, and a day trip over to Canada one year. They went to Washington, D.C., so it was like every weekend there was a trip, and then over spring break they would have a trip. My favorite one, though, was a partnership with the Oxford Architecture Department and Middletown art students. We went to London, England over spring break for 2 years, And it was absolutely amazing because some of the professors from Miami Middletown went along with us.
Well, we took a group of students to Canton, Mississippi. It was in conjunction with our artist and lecture. She was, okay, let me see if I can get her title right. Artist, lecture, in residence. And her name was Flonzie Brown Wright. And she was from Mississippi. And she was the co-teacher for this Black Issues in Higher Education class. And so she was giving us so much history about Mississippi because of course she was there in the height of the civil rights era, you know, the Medgar Evers and John Mayers. I mean, in fact, she knows all of those people. And she introduced us to those people when we went to Mississippi. And so she was able to bring that into the discussion. And we decided, hey, we should make this a trip. And so we raised funds for it. The Students in Faces, which is the faces and cultures of every student. It's the student organization on campus. It was myself, Flonzie Brown Wright, Dr. Jim Ewers, and there were about 10 or 15 students from Faces and other student organizations that went on the trip, and we had another outside chaperone that came with us. So the total was probably about 20 of us. We stopped along the way, and we stopped in Alabama. We stopped where Martin Luther King was assassinated. And so we stopped at the Civil Rights Museum along the way to our destination in Canton.
We came back and decided with Marilyn and my colleagues from Xavier to develop a course called Healthcare and Nursing in the Gambia. And that next year we went. We had some financial support from this campus. We visited health facilities. They worked in facilities for about a week. We visited UNICEF, the WHO. We met with the U.S. ambassador in most cases. We went to the Medical Research Council, which is research, first world research in the Gambia. And so they got to learn about another country in a sort of focused way.
Don't let that final cost of how much going to college is going to be deter you from taking that first step. You know, sometimes you think, oh, it costs $35,000, $65,000 to go to college, you know, and that's just too much. Take a class or two, take a step or two, and somebody will help you. You know, if you don't know anything about scholarships or loans or whatever, somebody is going to help you. And I think you get more help on a small college campus than you do on the larger campuses.
My personal experience is I knew that once I had a college education, nobody would ever take that away. Once you have it, you have it. And I think that's something students need to know. You know, it's not going to hurt you to test yourself, and there's nothing wrong with continuing and following what you start, because it's something that you'll always have accomplished, and no matter what else happens in your life, you're going to have that.
And when you've been cloistered in a fairly small Midwestern town as a single parent, you weren't that worldly.
Whether it's jobs, organizations, your classmates, your professors, I mean, it's just like Alex said, get involved and find your place, find your team. I think it makes it worth it, you know, coming here. If you have to, you know, take classes for 3 to 5 years, you might as well have fun while you're doing it and be around people that support you and care about your well-being and your success. Because it's, you know, and then by the time you do graduate, you can say, well, it's an ending, but it's not a goodbye. That's what I kept telling myself this spring. It was an emotional time, knowing that I was leaving my jobs. But you can always come back. You can always visit your family.
Miami University Middletown Campus has a long history of working on opportunity, social justice, and diversity. It is not always a smooth path, but progress has been made. In this segment, there are sweet memories of the growth of degree programs and a few bittersweet memories about the recent academic expansion from a primarily two-year degree campus that continues to be a gateway to the Oxford campus for many students. Now, there is the opportunity to complete 3 levels of degrees at the Middletown and Hamilton campuses. As Dean Kathy Bishop Clark puts it, we are starting a new chapter in the history of the regional campuses.
The thing that I remember most, in August of 1966, the Board of Trustees and President Schreiber stood on the balcony of Johnson Hall and predicted that this would be a 4-year campus in a very short time. Well, the irony is that it took 50 years to do this, because now we give baccalaureate degrees, so eventually they achieved their goal.
More students were telling us, I want to stay here. I need to stay here. I have young children. I have a family. I have ties to Middletown or Hamilton. I can't really just drop everything and go to Oxford. That's not, it's just not possible for me at this time in my life as an older student or whatever. So, or a student with family or jobs. So many of our children, our students are employed.
Actually, I saw, prior to coming to the campus, as a candidate, the university had sent to me a number of documents, including a rather lengthy self-study report that had been done for the North Central accreditation process in the mid-'80s. And it had to do with the relationships between the regional campuses and Miami University in Oxford. And that report was full of very interesting data, history, and suggestions from faculty and staff about how to proceed.
By the beginning of the 1990s, we're realizing that for us to be competitive, we needed to have a bachelor's degree program and not just associate degrees. And I convinced my deans that, look, and I had come from a 2-year college, I said, 2-year colleges are nimble. They can change programs, implement programs, and within a few months have a new program up and running. Here it's going to take us a 1.5 years to get a new program up and running.
We knew that we needed a 4-year bachelor's completion degree.
A lot of that stemmed from the fact that the state was looking to really couple the statewide economic development plans and aspirations with the statewide educational institutions.
Then when they began to start up the idea of CPSAS, that created that might not be Miami, might not have the diploma, names maybe sounds like a technical school, and so both of the communities kind of blew up again. And you know, Rob Shorman led lots of public and community meetings to try to dampen that. And Patty and I were also going to, you know, every event that somebody invited us to try to say, look, we're trying not to let this happen. We're there, you know, this is not, as when people say division, they're talking about an academic structure, not, you know, a separation, not a divorce. I was really surprised when the president and the trustees and the provost came back and said, now we want to combine everything together. And that is when, you know, President Hodge used the word separation, talked about maybe not having us be accredited with Miami University, maybe talking about a different diploma. And I'm telling you, that really, really scared these communities that had supported these campuses for 40 plus years. And I'm telling you personally, it scared me too. I did not think that that was the way things should go. And the indications about differential accreditation, maybe a different name, maybe certainly a different diploma, something to make the diploma different, was coming down really strong. And that made the last 2 years very difficult. And I think that where we are now, going forward, we're going to have a stable system to do that. I think that we have everything in place to go ahead and make this new model move forward, and I think it'll be a successful model. I also think that the new incoming president strongly sees the value of the regional campuses.
I can definitely see toward the future. I told a group this past week in a session that I was in, is I am waking up now at 3 in the morning, consistently, which is not a good thing. You don't want to wake up at 3 in the morning consistently. But I'm waking up at 3 in the morning wishing it were 6 so I could get started. There is so much that's right for the regionals right now. It's been a chaotic time the last 3, 4, 5 years. A very chaotic time. Chaotic not just in terms of who we are within Miami, but it's been chaotic emotionally. I'm going to steal language from other people. This is not my language, but in some ways we have landed, I feel like. So we've had all this chaos in the change. We've landed, and we're ready to build a new Miami Regionals, not without losing the past, but incorporating all the positive things that are happening right now. What are the positive things? Well, we have a new president, right? That new president has been out here 6 times in the last 2 months. Okay, he's very interested in the regional campuses, and he sees a lot of opportunity with Miami Regionals. We have landed. In other words, I'm hoping all that chaos can kind of settle for a while. Okay, we are launching our first ever master's degree. We are launching 5 new bachelor's degrees. That's a big deal. Institutions, even big institutions, don't launch 5 new degrees at one time. Half of our departmental administration is new. Okay, 6 new department chairs. That could be an incredible. You could view that as, oh my God, everything's so brand new. Or you can view that as that's an incredible opportunity. And that's what I think it is. I think we are really poised to do some wonderful things. And we have the faculty and staff to do it. We're sitting on a huge talent pool. And we have people with the talent and I think the energy and the motivation. And I'm hoping that past chaos will settle a little bit. We've landed. Let's build together something that's even better.
I definitely want people to know that this is Miami University. We are Miami University. Through all the changes we've gone through, that's a really important part of the Middletown campus identity. And that we are an institution that provides high quality degrees for students, now new 4-year bachelor degrees for our students, and that we will continue though with the relocation opportunities for students so that students can continue to come here. If they do not want one of our 4-year bachelor's degrees, they can still relocate to complete one of the over 70 majors that the Oxford campus has to offer. But I think that what's more important is our size and our sense of family here. That when a student comes here, they're really cared for. We really have their best interests at heart, and students don't get lost in the shuffle at Miami Middletown. They're really well looked after here.
The changes between 1966 and 1989 The addition, one thing was the addition of the science building.
Well, in the beginning, there wasn't much, really. Of course, Deskin Hall was not built, so we had a drafting lab just down the hall from here, and back then, of course, we had no computer-aided drafting. We did it on the old boards with a T-square.
Well, Mickey Sarkos she was the one that put all that together. And to run her program and to, we still, Jim Janik and I still call the building Mickey built. Because it was. She was the force behind it. She ran her world-renowned chemical education program out of that building. We all just kind of rode her coattails along and enjoyed every minute of it, because she was very generous with her time and her resources.
I think there was even a bill passed in Congress that the United States would go metric within a certain amount of time. And by golly, we who were teaching the elementary ed majors, we knew that we had to forge ahead with that. And so we did a lot with getting people to think metric, how big is a centimeter, and had to, the conversions, which of course nobody cared. The U.S. never did go metric, in spite of the threat that we were. Let me get back here. The U.S. never did go metric because we didn't have to. But I did a great service to humankind. I got a set of these, a parent's guide to metric measurement, and I passed one out to each student in my class so that they could become metric experts. And this thing is a meter long. It has the centimeters broken down, and by golly, I was on a mission to make the U.S. go metric, and there it is.
Nice.
Very primitive, isn't it? I was out to save the world on that, though.
Back then, they had like the regular adding machines, the machines that duplicate things. I don't even remember what they call those now. Mimeograph, that's it, the mimeograph. I do believe we had the electric typewriters, but I'm not positive. The key punch. It's just a little oblong card, and it had little holes in it, and those holes, depending on where they were punched, meant different words. I took some computer classes later.
There were a lot of changes that happened during my 31 years working here. We had the card catalog, and you had to go and look in books to find answers to things, or to find an article. You went to the Reader's Guide and found out where it would be.
Miami University Libraries in Oxford were part of OCLC long before the regional campuses. And Dr. Bennett was in Columbus for something, and he visited the Ohio State University Library, and somebody showed him how they could use this computer terminal to look up his doctoral dissertation and see the record for his doctoral dissertation on the computer screen as if you were looking it up in the card catalog. And that was what really turned the tide, and then all of a sudden he saw that maybe, yes, he would support the financial commitment that it took for us to go into OCLC, and that happened in the late 70s.
The computer room was started in the early 1980s, and that was my job for a while, rather than teaching chemistry. We started out with key punch machines and a terminal that was connected to the computer at Oxford by synchronous communication. But later on, personal computers came in, and we got rid of the key punch machines, and but we started getting on the internet also with telephone modems and so on. So it was a fairly new project.
At the Hamilton campus,
the Hamilton campus opened 2 years later than the Middletown campus, and the library had an automated checkout system. That when the library opened in 1968, the automated computer system, a checkout system, circulation system, was a key punch system. So we did what John was talking about. All of our circulation happened via a key punch system. There was a book card in each item in the library, and a system to support that. But then what we needed to do too is send all of the day's work to the Oxford campus, where the actual processing happened, the data processing happened.
I am a professor in computer and information technology. So the very first class I taught, it was actually on this floor of Johnston Hall, it was down the hall to the right, and it was in a regular classroom. So I taught a computing classroom on word processors, Excel, no, not Excel, way back then it was Lotus 123, word processors, Lotus 123, and a database management package, which I don't even remember. And I taught that without computers. You know, we actually were in a room with the overhead projector, and I'd have slides showing them what would be on a computer. That changed pretty quickly. So that was 27 years ago.
Apple was the big computer that we all used, but then things started shifting over to the Windows computers. And I actually remember Dr. Governani, he walked into the lab one day, and he always walked around at the beginning of the semester to see how everybody was doing. I always expected a visit from him because he would always stop in. He stopped in and he said, "Show me the lab, Janet." So we went into the lab and he said, "These are Apple computers." This was a little later after I'd been here sometime. I said, "That's, we haven't had the money to switch those over." And he said, "I'll find the money, get these out of here. I don't want to see these in here anymore." So he was always had his eye on trying to keep up with the tech times.
Well, we did have a good run of luck with grants. I will say we had not done a lot with grants in the first few years I was here, and really I think maybe starting maybe 4 years ago or somewhere we started to look into some grants and go after some things. And so in addition to the exhibition, the travel exhibition that we were able to bring in, we did get grants for a couple of different book discussion programs. We also brought in, or were able to bring in funds to purchase iPads for a set of iPads for the campus, both for using in the classroom, which we have a set of 25 that we circulate in the classroom. We were also able to bring in another 20 or so to circulate to students for a day. And that was very, very useful, I think, both in terms of giving students technology to use that they could take home in addition to some of the laptops that we were checking out. But it's been particularly useful in a couple of different classes, particularly in our chemistry classes.
Now, though, I tend to use iPads in my classroom. And we're very fortunate at Miami Middletown to have a class set of iPads that were acquired through a grant from the state of Ohio. And the library maintains them, and you can check them out and use them in your classroom. Students can check them out even overnight and use them. And in fact, when I went did study abroad to Italy a couple times, we had our students check out the iPads, and all of the course content was loaded on the iPads, and we carried them overseas. So they're pretty versatile in terms of teaching. But what I wanted to share with you was a couple apps that I use with my students. And these are loaded onto the library iPads. The library's been fantastic. They'll load anything that I ask them to, and then they'll mask them onto all of the iPads, and everybody in the class can use this. And many of these apps are free, so in fact, when I even use them in classes, students will say, "How can I get that on mine?" Which is awesome, that they're actually that interested. And this is an app in particular called Chem3D, and it opens with an absolutely, I'll show y'all, exquisitely beautiful image of DNA, which is not a model that I could begin to build. But what's really beautiful is that you can manipulate it. And what I love about this is you can teach this and you can show that there are actually no chemical bonds between the individual strands of DNA. And what holds the strands together is hydrogen bonding. So when you're trying to teach students the importance of hydrogen bonding and why they should care, they usually care when they show them an image of DNA.
Changes in our lab. We now have simulated dolls. we used to have just like an adult-sized baby doll that we would give baths to, or instead of having a live patient. Now we have simulated ones, and they're run by a computer. And the instructor who runs the computer can have the simulated doll have different crises that you might expect to have in a patient, and the student needs to respond to that.
The thing is that in most countries in the world, geography is taught as a rigorous subject through all grades in high school. And in the United States, for the most part, it is not. And in all my years of teaching, I had one student come to the university to major in geography. One student that had an interest in geography. And of course, talking about high tech, the problem is that they had absolutely no idea or knowledge of maps.
So one of the ways that I use technology in my introduction to organizational communication classes, we use some social media software that basically just listens to social media and it pulls in content from Twitter or Facebook or RSS feeds or blogs. In that class, I have each student kind of pick an organization that they might be interested in, and that ranges from where they might actually be working and have worked there since high school in like a small local mom and pop type shop, to United Airlines or larger corporations. I also think it's kind of a practical exercise for them too, because then they can go to a job interview and say, well, I had done this analysis and I looked at this and here are some things that I found.
I started here in 1981, and my first semester, my teaching assignment was 4 sections of English 111. So I started thinking about maybe teaching something else. 111 is my favorite class, but 4 sections of it may be a bit much. So after a semester or 2, I offered a film class. Well, by the time we got to YouTube, you could develop more assignments that engage students with closer readings of the material, because they could find the stuff on YouTube themselves.
We started a venture with the IT people in Oxford called COOL, Center of Online Learning. Because I guess I need to back up a little. In 1999, Dr. Beth Dietz realized that there was a problem with her night classes. You taught night classes once a week. So if a student missed one night or even 2 nights, they pretty much had to drop the class because they were so far behind. And she wanted to find a way that students could, stay in class, not have, your car broke down or a babysitter didn't show up, then that was kind of it for that student. And we wanted to find a way to keep them in class. So she taught the first online class, 1999, and then I converted a physics class in 2000, and we started kind of this grassroots teaching online at the regional campuses, and it was working. So then in 2006, we kind of tried to formalize it. We saw that there was a lot of different people thinking about this hybrid online thing. Miami University is known for their quality of their classroom experience and quality teaching. So we thought we should kind of formalize it. There was organizations around the country that were formalizing online learning, and just to be sure that everybody understood what was involved. You didn't just take your notes and post them online, that there was a lot more to it than that. So that's the first year of the Center of Online Learning. Now we've evolved to today, when we have an entire unit, regional e-learning, that I am the senior director of, and we have, several hundred classes online.
Another thing this campus provides, I think, to the community is a social gathering center, if you will, for community residents. In particular, Finkelman. Unfortunately, the orchestra is on its way out this weekend. The Knoll Community Room, a place where events are held and you get together with folks for dinner or reception that you don't normally chat with, or they aren't your next door neighbor necessarily, but they're there and part of the Middletown community.
Miami was having a fund drive here in Middletown, and
someone had asked my wife and I, Pat, to be on the committee for the fund drive. And I asked Ron Ely to co-chair with us because I knew Ron knew where the money was because he was a trust officer with First National Bank. And I forget the fund, the goal, it was something like $4 million or something like that. But things were kind of tough, and we were coming short, and we went to John Sawyer and said, you know, of course, then the three of us made up the committee, and you know, unless we kick in a lot of money, this is not going to happen. The Knoll Foundation has sort of been a gap filler. You know, here was a fund drive that was not going to quite make it, and we've come up, stepped up, not we, the Knoll Foundation has stepped up and filled those gaps.
That construction of Miriam Knoll is very, very important. It has really made a difference in Middletown. And I love the idea that it's the campus, and I think because some community money was used to help build it, then Miami Middletown really feels strongly that the community is welcome to use it. I think that's one of the most important parts.
Miami has brought, here on campus, has brought so much to our community, and opening the community facilities up to nonprofits and for activities for our community to engage in. It's just a wonderful resource, and how blessed we are that we have this.
Rotary made a sizable donation to the campus community facility. It provided for the small kitchen that is associated with that. It's a more of a caterer's kind of kitchen, and so and actually we have used that for some of the activities here on the campus. But one of the things that's a continuing thing that we do to support the campus and the students are scholarships through our Rotary Foundation. And we generally will provide scholarships for 4 to 6 of the non-traditional students that are attending the campus.
The problem we had was that alumni here then went to Oxford, and the minute they went to Oxford, they identified with Oxford. They no longer identified. Now, Oxford was very supportive at that time.
I started a scholarship in my name because I have been given donation to other people for their scholarship, and it occurred to me, why can't I start my own? Why am I giving my money for someone else's scholarship? And I thought about what type of scholarship I wanted, and I decided that since people always say single parents, it's negative about single parents, and they cannot do a good job of raising kids, and I am a single mother. And I wanted to give a scholarship to single African American women because I wanted to give them the ability to go out and look for jobs, to give their children the best kind of education and home environment that they possibly can give them.
One of the student organizations I was involved with, I think it was an organization, was Mums Tots. And I was one of the original staff volunteers at Mums Tots. We were all students that were in the education program. And so I coordinated hours that other students were volunteering. When Mums Tots first started, it was a way that students could bring their children to be watched during classes. It was all a volunteer program, and students that brought their children, rather than paying, they were allowed to work there as well. So it was kind of like the barter system.
We have a wonderful partnership with the YMCA and MUM. And how it started was there used to be daycare here called Mum Tots. And so in about 2005, there was conversations that took place between the Middletown YMCA and Mum Tots in regards to overseeing management. So in 2005, the Y came in and started having all these different talks and then said, okay, we're going to make a transition for the management component. And in 2006, license changed and the YMCA began running early learning centers from here, right here, located in this building in Verity Lodge. We take the entire downstairs of this lodge, the center here. And so we run this center here that it's gone on now, since 2006. That we went into the collaborations and very excited about what has transpired over the years. Through the process, we have had the United States Secretary of Education who came here in 2013 to actually hold a press conference as it related to early learning education. And Teresa Reeves here, who's with us with the YMCA, is the site administrator here.
As the years go by, we've had as many as 33 children. This past semester, last year, we had 31. So for us, that's just absolutely huge. Right now I'm excited because I've got 15 toddlers starting at the end of the month. So we're full. We have actually hired students that have come in as observers.
We have a scholarship. It's called the Dave and Janet Sadr Scholarship. Very creative.
Novel.
But we created it because we wanted to give back to the community being those that live here and around Middletown. And so it's designed that a student who is at Miami Middletown, who is relocating to Oxford, more to try and make that more affordable.
Last year, as Miami University Middletown celebrated its 50th anniversary, the Middletown Community Foundation was celebrating our 30th anniversary of separating from United Way and becoming active in the community. And for the entirety of that 30 years, we have always had the dean of Miami University Middletown, or the regional campuses, on our board of trustees. I think that's a great example of the community partnership that Miami has made front and center in its existence in this community.
I joined a neighborhood civic association, and I was a little surprised when I joined that association because, lo and behold, Dr. Bob and Dr. John Cinnamon were at that meeting. And I've been involved with community groups before, but I've never been at one where the local university was actually partnering with community people to make the community that the school was in and where people lived a better place to live, learn, work, and play.
Breaking it down, service learning is where our students, we send them out into the community. They partner with our wonderful community partners that we have here, Ned, as an example. And they build on their experiential experiences, working with the community partners, building skills, learning about new cultures, new communities. And they're tying it together with their curriculum within the classroom as well.
I work for the Butler County Board of Developmental Disabilities. I've been there for about 6 months now, a little over, and one of my first projects was working with a service learning student with Crystal, and it was such a great experience. I can't wait to get another service learning student from MUM.
We've had the opportunity in 2015 to host 12 student volunteers. In 2016, we hosted 16 student volunteers, and during that time, we hired 4 of the students. So we are so excited about our partnership, and really it's more than a partnership. It's like Crystal said, you build relationships, friendships that go on even after they're done volunteering.
I direct the program PAUSE, which is
a program that supports families who have children with disabilities. We have an initiative within our program called Helping Hands, and that's where we partnered with Miami to go to families in our PAWS program and help them tackle their to-do list. And so that day in June, about 100 students came.
I'm here on behalf of the Art Central Foundation. I am an alumni from Miami University of Middletown. I graduated here in December 14. I'm an artist and a craftsman myself. So for me, like when that opportunity came, they said, oh, you serve with one of the art groups in the community. I'm like, perfect. Like, that's going to be too easy. My service learning project was in the spring semester, and then through that summer, I helped them with a couple of the classes, and then ended up being asked to be on their board of directors. The campus doesn't just invest, it gave me a reason to invest in the community.
We'll continue the quality. I mean, this whole institution has a quality reputation, and I think if they can continue that for the next 50 years, they'll be doing fine.
Obviously, having a regional campus here right in the center of town across the street from our high school is just, I think, I can't imagine any other area that has such a thing. And so when I think about 50 years of that, and I think about the number of students who have gone through here that have made their way to the Oxford campus or made their way on to another university for that matter, because of the accessibility of this regional campus has made them successful, has gotten them the college degree they've sought after or they wanted for a successful life. And so when I think about all the things that I know that Mom does for this community and does for Middletown City Schools, I know these last 50 years have been wonderful years with a cooperative effort between the two entities. And so for that, I'm very, very appreciative.
I've been involved with generating scholarship money for the university for many years through the Rotary Club in Middletown, and so that was really what I've been doing the last 20 plus years.
And then when you think about the next 50 years, do you have any words of wisdom or words of advice for us?
Well, we would certainly like to be able to do what we did a few years ago. We generated the Bob Breidenbach Rotary Scholarship, and after he passed away, he was a dear friend of Miami University Middletown Campus, and he and his wife were very generous to the university. And
continue to do what you're doing. You know, Miami's a great university, and I think this campus continues to give opportunities for the local people of this area. Certainly it was a godsend for me to be able to have a local university to be able to go to when I was getting out of high school. I don't know that I could have pursued a college career without it.
I would like to say thank you. Thank you for this vision of this wonderful campus. And everyone's, for the past 50 years, thank you for growing this campus and growing this Miami community, allowing me to be a part of it, allowing my family to be a part of it, and hopefully for the next generation or my generation, next generation, I hope that they can be a part of it too. So I just want to say thanks for this vision because it worked out.
Yeah, I would definitely want to say thanks, especially for investing into the city of Middletown, because this city does get written off so much, but this campus gives Middletown hope and it gives the future generations hope. And I hope that the future generation does invest in this place as well, that 25 years from now we can look back and be like, man, it is still here and it is still thriving and this city is still being invested in. And I just want them to know that their work mattered so much, because I mean, this is only 4 of us sitting at a table when there are so many more people that could be here talking about their experiences from this place specifically. And going off of what both of them say, to say thank you. I know without that original group to set all this up, I wouldn't have made the friends that I made here, that I am hoping they mean so much to me. So I'm hoping that I can have them for the rest of my life. But because of, I mean, like I've said before, like I was an athlete, I had other offers to go to other schools. And being here for 4 years and about to graduate from here,
I truly don't believe that I would have had the experience and the love that I have for any other school that I even thought about or that I was offered. I feel like everything that I got out of college, I would have only gotten here, and there's no replacing that. So all the visions that, you know, the original group had, hats off to you. It has happened. Yeah. We appreciate it.
We were talking how their desire when they started this was to bring about a campus that would foster people that would bring about change and an impact to the city of Middletown. Well, when I look around the hallways, I see people who are not only changing the city of Middletown, but are changing the world and will change the world. So thank you to those of you who gave us this opportunity to come to this institution and to find ourselves who we truly are. And to everybody out there who's watching this, never give in and don't give up. The opportunities are out there. All you desire, the world is yours. Love and honor, One Miami. I think that this place is truly spectacular. So thank you all.
Logan Johnston is a friend. I could continue all morning and not elaborate to any better extent on his abilities and traits. Part of the program this morning is entitled The Middletown Dream. I can assure you that it was no dream when the captaincy of the fundraising committee was turned over to Logan Johnston. We knew that it was a reality, a blueprint for reality. Logan Johnston is our friend. He has never hesitated to give us advice. He has been warm, he has been kindly, and if I'm embarrassing him, I mean every word of it. Logan Johnston.
WPSC AM and FM, Middletown, Ohio.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. Since you've said those words, I'm not going to return them. I accept. Governor Rhodes, distinguished guests, and friends. This is a most thrilling experience for me, as I know it is for many of you. To be here today to witness the realization of a dream of 4 years ago, to really have a university in our community. Dean Seskin's excellent review of events revealed again the fact that the realization of this dream was made possible by the cooperation, hard work, and financial support of the people of the Middletown-Oxford area, many of whom are present today. If we were to recognize individually all of those who have had a part in this project, we would be here most of the afternoon. For who is the most important? Is it the governor who allocated to us $2 million from the bond issue, or the widow who pledged $25 to be deducted from her hourly wages earned as a housekeeper? Both are equally important, each in its own way. Nevertheless, I cannot let this occasion go by without acknowledging the support of certain individuals and organizations, even though Dean Seskin has referred to several of them. There was Dr. Millett as president of Miami and as chairman of the Board of Regents. There was the McGraw Construction Company that did the feasibility study, Barnett's Fund that provided money for the preliminary drawing, Armco Steel that gave the land on which this university is being built, the JCs that contributed $8,000 for library books before we even knew whether we would have a library, the girls, Armco girls who gave their holiday house, the city of Middletown, who came through with facilities needed to enter into a project like this, including Creel Boulevard for the entrance. Governor Rhodes and what he did in putting over state issue number 1. The community support from industries and business, professional people and citizens generally. Gardner Harvey Foundation, which through their very generous gift have created the Gardner Harvey Memorial Library, which we see in front of me, in memory of two great citizens, the seniors, Messrs. Gardner and Harvey. We join this morning in publicly acknowledging this wonderful addition to the Middletown campus. There are several members of the Gardner Harvey Foundation present, and I would like each of them to stand and be recognized. Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Harvey, Mr. and Mrs. Colin Gardner, Mr. and Mrs. Robert B. Gardner, Mr. William E. Gardner. I think these members of the Gardner Harvey Foundation deserve a wonderful hand.